Lesson 40 is about using 0 as a placeholder in circle graphs. Now the first problem that we have is to subtract 0.5 minus 0.32. We know when we're subtracting decimals we've got to line up our digits by their place value, and we're going to do that vertically. So let's go ahead and do that on the side. We've got 0.5 minus 0.32. Now this lesson is called using 0 as a placeholder, and we've talked about this briefly already. We know that we want a value in each of our place value positions, so we're going to add a 0 as a placeholder to make it easier to subtract. Now we can go ahead and do that. Well, if we look at it, 0 minus 2, let's go ahead and borrow and regroup to make that easier. We're going to take from the 5 to get 4, and the 0 becomes a 10. Now we can go ahead and find our answer. We've got 10 minus 2, that's 8. 4 minus 3, that's 1. Decimal point comes straight down. And remember, even if it's 0 in the ones position, we like to write it so it's very clear that we have a decimal answer. We've got 1800ths, or 0.18. That's our final answer. Using 0 as a placeholder makes it easier to figure that out. Let's look at our next example. Alright, let's subtract. We have 3 minus 0.4. This one, same thing. Let's line up by place value. So we have 3 minus, well 0 is in the ones, so it gets stacked below the 3. Then we have 0.4. 3 is the same thing as 3.0. So we're going to use that 0 as a placeholder to make it easier to see what we're going to work with. We're subtracting, so in this problem, well 0 minus 4, let's borrow from the 3 to get 2, and now our 0 becomes a 10. We have 10 minus 4. 10 minus 4, that's 6. Decimal points come straight down because we've lined up by place value, and 2 minus 0 must be 2. So we've got our answer. The difference in this problem, remember difference is the answer to a subtraction problem, is equal to 2 6/10, or 2.6. Let's look at our next slide. Here, we're multiplying 0.2 times 0.3. We're multiplying this time. So if we multiply, our process is a little bit different. What we're going to do, we're going to move the decimals out of our factors. So we've got 0.2 times 0.3. Step 1. Remember from our last lesson? We move the decimal out. So we're going to get once, twice. We moved it out twice. Now we're multiplying whole numbers. So we're going to say 2 times 3. Well, that's an easy one. 2 times 3, that must be 6. So we've got our answer of 6, but we need to remember, we're multiplying by decimals. So we move the decimal out twice, so we have to move it in twice. So we're going to get once, twice. Well, there's nothing there. You can see to the left of the 6, between the 6 and the decimal point. So we've got to add a 0 as a placeholder. We're going to add another 0 in front of it to make it obvious that our decimal is between those two zeros. So our final answer, let's rewrite clearly. We get 0.06, or 600ths, and we're all done. Use that 3-step process whenever you multiply decimals to make sure you get the decimal point in the correct position in the end. Okay, let's use digits to write the decimal number 12 thousandths. If we want to use digits, we're going to have to use numbers, and we're writing the decimal 12 thousandths. So thousandths, it must be in the decimal. Let's use some place value. We've got our ones, our decimal point. Then remember we have our tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. So in this problem, if we have 12 thousandths, what that's going to look like, well, we've got 12, and then it must be in the thousandths. Remember this position, the third position to the right of the decimal, is the thousandths position. So we've got our number, except we need to have a 0 between the 1 and the decimal point as a placeholder, and we've got to have a 0 in the ones to make it obvious that we've got a decimal number. So we could go ahead and rewrite to make our answer clear. We've got 0.012, or 12 thousandths. And we've got our answer to this question. The second part of our lesson is on circle graphs. Okay? And another name for circle graphs, of course, is pie graphs or pie charts. Now the question says, use the circle graph to answer the following questions. And question A is, how many pets are represented in the graph? Now if we look at the graph, we know if we go all the way around and count everything in it, that's our whole. So if we figure out how many pets are in the graph, we're able to do that. Let's see. We've got 16 dogs, 8 cats, 4 birds, and 4 fish. So if we want to know how many total pets there are, we have to add everything up. So we're going to get 4 plus 4. Well, that's 8. Plus 8 more. 8 plus 8 more is equal to 16. And then we go on to the dogs. And we get plus 16 more dogs. 16 plus 16. You know what that is with mental math? Did you get 32? I hope you did, because 16 plus 16 is 32. And if we look at that vertically, 16 plus 16, 6 plus 6 is 12. We carry the 1, and we've got 3 ones, so we've got 32, just as we saw with our mental math. Now question B says, what fraction of the pets are birds? B-I-R-D-S, of course. Birds needs a D in it. We can rewrite that. What fraction of the pets are birds? Well, we can see we have 4 birds. So the fraction of the pets that are birds must be 4 out of 32. If we have 4 out of 32, well, both of these are even numbers, so we can cut them in half. Let's do that. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And half of 32 is 16. Both of these are still even numbers. Let's cut them in half again. We're going to divide by 2 over 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So we get 1/8 as our answer. Whenever we have a fraction that can be reduced, we reduce it. We've got our final answer. 1 out of every 8 pets will be a bird. Now quickly, if we look back at problem A, it said how many pets are represented in the graph? We have a word problem. So we had an answer of 32, but we've got to add a label onto it. And the label that we're going to add on is 32 pets. And we're going to add that on so that we know specifically we were talking about pets. And that includes fish, birds, cats, and dogs. Lesson practice will be on page 210. Make sure you've got your notes complete, and I'll see you during our next class.